Hello, everyone. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. We are looking at critical windows of development in children today. Thank you for coming. Do you mind dropping a chat and telling us where you are signing in from? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. We are going to be starting immediately, and we plan not to keep you here for long, we promise. Okay, so I'll just go straight to it and introduce our panelists. I want to say thank you once again for joining us. I know you will learn something new and something you'll be able to share with others as well. Okay, so immediately I'm going to be sharing my screen and I am going to be introducing the panelists. The first is Mrs. Mabel Okerafo. Mrs. Mabel Okerafo is a graduate from the prestigious Obafemi Awolowo University with a bachelor's degree in psychology and went on to complete a master's in developmental psychology from the University of Lagos, Akoka. Mabel is a certified early childhood development and care consultant, an early interventionist, and a parent coach. Her areas of expertise include coaching parents of children birth to 5 years on ways of creating enriched environment that support their optimal development of their child, creating systems of support for families of children with or at risk of a developmental delay, and coaching parents of children with disruptive behaviors. Okay, so please take your pen, take your paper. You have questions to ask, and we're not done. Mabel is a HANEN in bracket Canada licensed early communication professional and a Ruby parent coach. Mabel consults for schools on screening and assessment and develops expert content for children-related brands. She is the clinical director of Nuture Child Development Clinic, Nigeria's pioneer private pediatric psychology practice. She is a wife to a Superman, and together they are raising 4 superstars. Can we please hear it in the chat room for Mrs. Okerafo?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Give me a second. Before I introduce the next panelist, I was almost tempted to say his name. Before I introduce him, I would like somebody in the chat room, somebody present here, to just type in the chat room what you are expecting to learn today. Okay, I see a lot of welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I'm about to share again, but I don't know why I'm mizing him. But let me be nice. Let me be nice because I know you came here to learn today and to hear him. Some of you are already you already know what you're in for. It's not the first time you are coming online and meeting Mrs. Okerafo, but there's someone you also need to meet. And please take your paper, take your pen, take out any distraction. You need to hear this person. I'd like to introduce you to you, Dr. Oluseun Ogunlaja, Senior Registered Pediatrician, Mercy Children's Hospital. If you know, if you're conversant with Children's Hospital in Lagos, then you know that you're in for more than what you registered for. Dr. Ogunlaja Oluseun is a Senior Register in Pediatrics at Mercy Street Children's Hospital. He's a graduate of Lagos State University College of Medicine, LASUCOM. He has over 10 years work experience in care of children. He is passionate about overall holistic care of the Nigerian child. Thank you. His hobbies include reading, watching movies, playing board games, and ardently supporting his club. It's okay. Chelsea Football Clubs. All right. Dr. Oluseun Ogunlaja is happily married to an amazing Amazon with lovely children. Can we please hear it for Dr. Oluseun? Welcome. Thank you so much. Please, can we hear it in the chat room? Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're welcome, sir. Yes, I hear them saying you're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Has anybody said what they are expecting to learn? Let me check my chat room. Okay. All right. Okay, you're being welcome. Thank you very, very much. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Oluremi Tani from Abulegba. Thank you. Okay, all right. We'll just head immediately. Dr. Sheung, you have the floor. There are a lot of questions that are I already have lined up for you, and I'm sure people who registered also have their questions waiting. But I also know you have a bit of teaching you would like to do, so I'm going to just hold back my questions because I'm very sure that there are some things you already answer to that. So but I'm just going to ask you a little bit if there's any other thing you want the audience to know about you. Feel free to say it. Other than that, you have the floor, sir. You can take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So welcome everyone. So we're going to be talking about critical renewals of development, optimizing peak periods for your child's life success. And the major discourse here will be talking about delayed milestones as possible indicators to missed windows, in child's care. So there's this concept which we doctors and those involved in childcare talk about, the concept of the principle of the first 1,000 days. And this period actually refers to the period of conception, like when the woman gets pregnant, till the child becomes 2 years of age. And this period is of great importance in the sense that that's when the majority of brain development occurs significantly. And it's such a critical period that events and insults that occur to a child within this period of time can eventually lead to an adverse outcome in terms of the child's growth in life. So a lot of importance is always to mother's nutrition, and exclusive breastfeeding, what the child is being weaned up to, the kind of multivite to give the child, the kind of exposures to give the child, because it's like the formative days of a child for every child. This concept of the first 1,000 days. And now, this here just shows more like a stage-wise opportunities in a child's care. Now, if you look at this slide and really pay attention to it, you realize that most of the development of a child achieves is usually done by age 2 years. Now, beyond age 3 years, it's just a few things that they begin to learn. Most of everything a child needs to learn usually starts within that critical period in terms of their gross motor development, developing their emotions, their visions, how they interact with other children, interact with their environment, even learning of language. That's one miracle that we can't really explain how it occurs. How children learn language. You speak to them, they use words. Many kids can even say things they can write. I communicate with my daughter. She's just 2 years. And the things she says amazes me. Things she can't even put to write. She barely can write. She's just writing A and B. But she communicates with you. She can say what she wants, she can express herself. So it's so important, this first period of 1,000 days of a child's life. So you just have to get it right so that the child can go properly, learn what the child needs to learn, and eventually, have good outcome. But that's what we parents want. We want our children to have good outcome in life. Now, as I said earlier, my major discourse to be on developmental milestones. And what do we mean by developmental milestones? Now, these are things every child should achieve as the child begins to grow. So, as is written in here, there are behavioral or physical skills seen in infants and children as they grow and develop. And it's age dependent in the sense that when a child is age 2 months, we expect the child should start smiling to the mom. When a child is age 3 months, we expect that the child should start, suspending the neck. The child should be able to put his neck upright. When the child is at age 4 months, there's certain things the child should be able to do, and just as the child grows. So a delay in a milestone will come in context where, let's say, a child of about age 3 months, the child doesn't even respond to the mother's face, the child doesn't smile, or a child that is about age 6 months, the child is yet to sit. Now, those could be pointers to delay in a child's milestones. No, so there is a normal range in which a child may reach each milestone. For example, some children, they walk as early as 8 months, and these are just variations. You have some children by 8 months, they are walking already, but typically you expect a child from about 1 year, 11 months, 1 year. And there are this set of children we call bottom shufflers. These are babies where they never crawl really. They just shuffle on their butts. You put them down and they just move around shuffling on their butts. Now, this set of kids, typically, they walk late. So if you find a child with that is a bottom shuffler, we give them like till about 18 months, thereabouts. About 6, that's like 1 year, 6 months. Yeah, some of them don't even actually get up to walk on their own till that late. But those are just a few exceptions. But typically, most children between the age 11 and 12 months, they should start walking independently. As I rightly said, others walk as late as 18 months and is still considered normal. Now, there are different domains to milestones. Now, we classify them as gross motor, fine motor, social, speech, and language. Now, gross motor strictly refers to the gross muscular activity the child develops, like neck control, when the child begins to crawl, when the child begins to walk. Fine motor refers to things that are fine, like a child playing with toys. The child being able to hold an item in one hand and pass it to the other hand. The child can actually look at a toy and turn it around, look at it and play with it here. Then social will refer to social interaction, like when the child begins to smile, when the child begins to follow sounds, when the child begins to follow musicals or watch TV and things like that. Then speech and language also refers to when they begin to socially express themselves by cooing, or they begin to make little noises like baba, and when they start to make fewer sentences. So this image here just shows like a summary of everything I've said in terms of the age-specific milestones every child should attain. So by age 1 month, we expect the child should be able to suspend the neck to some extent, really, when the child is prone. Prone simply means when the child is lying and tummy down. So fine motor, child should be able to maintain a fisted hand. Language, child should be able to cry when upset. Social, child should be able to at least focus on the parent's face. So by age 2 months, most babies smile to their mom. When the mom is talking, they begin to coo. By age 4 months, most of them begin to become an honor grasp. So when you put something in their hand, they can hold it firmly. By age 6 months, most babies can sit with some degree of support, some even without support. By age 9 months, most of them begin to crawl. There's something we call pincer grabs, where a child begins to hold an item finely with 2 fingers. Then from age 10 months and 12 months, they should be able to at least get up to walk and use a few words, dada, mama, understand simple commands like stop, go, come, and things like that. So all these are age specific, and it's worth of note. Parents should pay attention to if you are nursing a growing child, so that at a certain age, when a child is not doing certain activities, you can actually seek for help, or you can seek for a consult and say, okay, my child is 6 months, child is not yet sitting up, would there be a problem, and things like that. Now, coming to the main discourse of delay of the day, developmental delay. So this refers to when a child who has not gained a developmental skill expected of him or her compared to others of the same age. So relatively, if you've had a child before and you have another child, that can be a way some parents will know that, oh, this particular child by age 6 months, I was sitting up, but this particular one, child is 7 months already, he's not yet sitting. What could be the problem? So delays may occur in areas of motor function, speech and language, cognition, play, and social skills. Now, there's a term called global developmental delay. Now, this means when a child has significant delay in 2 or more of these areas of development. Now, what could cause a child having developmental delay? It's a myriad of problems, which could occur from things, a condition we call parental asphyxia. And this is a situation where a child is born and the child doesn't cry. Let me don't use this word. the child doesn't cry at birth. And this could occur for varied reasons. People that have prolonged labor, people that have obstructed labor, those that deliver in birth attendants, and they're not properly sustained at birth. And the net effect of this is that there's not enough oxygen to the brain, and the child suffers some degree of brain insults. And if this process is altered as soon as possible, let's say a child was delivered in the hospital, the child will be admitted, put on oxygen, they start on fluids, start antibiotics. Some recover fully, and even when we follow them up in the clinics, they do very fine. They don't suffer any form of insults in the long term, as compared to a child that suffered the same process, then maybe was taken at home for a few days. When they now realize the child wasn't sucking, the child is having convulsion, they now take to the hospital. The chances that the child might suffer some form of delay, it's there, as compared to someone that got help as soon as possible, as soon as delivery, the baby got help. Also, jaundice. Jaundice is something that's quite common in this part of the world, really, for various reasons, really. Some parents don't observe it on time. Some people decide to treat it locally, and they present to the hospital late. And by then, the child has already suffered some degree of neuronal damage. Prematurity simply means when a child is born before 9 months. And then this is also something that's quite common in an environment for different reasons. And so preterm care is something that's very big, and it depends on how preterm the child is. A baby that is born about age 7 months, the degree of the child having some degree of neurological problems is higher as compared to the baby that was born that's close to 8 months or thereabouts. Then infections, babies have infections. And if it's severe enough to spread into the brain, and they develop what we call meningitis, and if it's not properly treated also, this
Hello, Dr. Shion.
Looks like we lost his connectivity.
Yes, we'll just give him a few minutes. I'm sure he will be back so that we don't interrupt his presentation.
Okay,
He must
I
be
think he's
network.
back. He's
Dr. Shion,
back.
can you hear us?
Yes, I can
Okay,
now. I think
sorry
my
about
network went off in between.
yeah. Okay. Okay, so go on, please.
Okay, so Down syndrome also, it's quite common in this environment also. We
Sorry,
find,
doctor, we can no longer see your screen.
oh, okay, I have to
You have
reshare.
to start it. Yes, please.
Okay, I'm coming. What about now?
Yes, you're back.
Okay, so Down syndrome also is possible. Then trauma. In this part of the world, we shake babies a lot for reasons I can't explain why. But there's a syndrome called shaking baby syndrome, which also will actually lead to babies suffering some form of bleeding in the brain. And eventually, if these things are not paid attention to, the child could actually develop some sort of problem in the long run. Then taking of drugs or alcohol when pregnant, family discord. Um, Scientifically, this might not be proven, but the outcome of a child that comes from a discordant family, one way or the other, affects the child's growth. You can't compare a child that grew up in a home that there's a lot of love, the parents are cordial with each other, as compared to a child that has been exposed to parental abuse, parental fights, parental neglect. The outcome of this, it's one way or the other, it affects the child's outcome, and definitely could affect the child's neurological development. And also child abuse and neglect. Now, what could be a few pointers to a child having some form of developmental delay that we could pay attention to as parents? Now, if you notice your child that at the point in time the child is supposed to do certain things, the child is not doing it. Like when the child is supposed to sit up, when the child is supposed to crawl or walk, and you're noticing that at this particular age, this child should have done this as compared to the older sibling. Yeah, that could be a pointer to the child having some form of developmental delay. If the child's learning is slower than normal. Now, every child learns differently. The pace at which children learn things are different, but you can actively tell if this particular child that you expect to have learned certain things, and you didn't know where you would notice this thing that there's definitely something wrong somewhere. That by now you should be able to identify colors. This is color red, this is color blue, and you're finding it more challenging in teaching that child, then definitely that could be a pointer to something wrong somewhere, and the child might need extra care. A child that has difficulty socializing or communicating with others, you just realize that this child just likes being alone, just likes throwing tantrums unnecessarily. It could be a pointer towards some form of, problem somewhere, or difficulty in talking or talking late. Yeah, some babies have issues with speech. Some talk quite late, some have slurry speech, or they might express some form of speech defect or the other. So this could be a pointer to, seeking help. And if the child cannot connect actions with consequences, so you are seeing a child, that telling the child, stop it, I will spank you. And the child doesn't even understand that. And the child still goes ahead and still does the same action. So the child is probably not getting the fact that, for every action is a consequence. And definitely that might be when you need to seek help. Then the child has difficulty solving problems or logical thinking. The child has trouble learning in school, or inability to do everyday tasks like getting dressed or using the restroom without help. Of course, at a certain age, by age 2-3 years, you should expect the child to be able to do certain things. Take off his socks, take off the panties. Maybe they might not be able to dress themselves yet, but little things like, yeah, wear your socks or wear your shoe. I'll always make example to my daughter. She's 2 years and she can do basic things like that. So imagine if you have another child about the same age and the child can't understand basic instructions like that, then definitely you know that yes, you might need to seek some form of help for the child. Now, in children with developmental delay, what kind of help can you get? Definitely, your line of care probably need to start with seeing a pediatrician, which the child is going to be seeing. Series of questions will be asked in terms of trying to identify the problems, right from possible causes, where the baby was delivered, the child had any problem in utero, had any problem during delivery, any illness, in terms of the nutrition of the child, and then the child will be examined and to find out exactly what level of defect the child has, and the appropriate therapy could be instituted. Some babies just need maybe some form of supplementation and maybe a few drugs here and there. But most of the time, children with developmental delays, the mainstay of treatment usually is therapy. So the pediatricians will definitely see, but they can just guide you in terms of what line of therapy does this child need. So if the child needs to see a speech therapist, they will tell you that, okay, this child needs to see a speech therapist. Maybe the problem that was identified was a speech defect. And I say, okay, yes, the child needs to see a speech therapist. If it's a child with a behavioral problem, definitely the child needs to see a behavioral therapist. If it's a child that has gross physical problems, a child has developmental, let's say a child that has Down syndrome, that's generally floppy. So the child needs to see a physical therapy that will help them with, exercises, things that help to strengthen their muscles and let them be able to at least improve in terms of their gross movements. And also, in the line of care, which I didn't include that, at some point, some babies will need to assess their audiological function. That also should be in line with line of treatment, because a baby has to hear first before they can speak. So definitely a child that has some form of developmental delay, you need to be sure the child can hear. Even if the parents tell you that, oh, the baby understands commands, that come, the baby understand, fine. But you need to be sure if the child actually has maybe some form of fine deafness, and that might probably be the problem. And maybe just, this is just someone that does need a hearing device. And you're just surprised that, voila, almost everything that you're seeing just disappears. And so definitely, audiological function assessments is also some form of treatment in terms of caring for children with developmental delay. Thank you very much. I tried to keep the time, so this is just 20 minutes. So thank you for your time. I think I'm done with my presentation.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Shion. Thank you for a lot of things. Thank you, because I think the audience will have more time to ask their own questions because you have
Yeah.
covered the bulk of the questions I had lined up for you. Thank you for keeping to time. Thank you for making it simple. You know, you just broke it down. Everybody can understand it because I'm sure when some people heard doctor, their minds may have been, this what grammar, bring some medical terms that will not need dictionary to start, deciphering, but it was very easy. Anybody could have understood it. And I see everybody in the chat. Allow me to say thank you. Different people are saying thank you. Kehinde say thank you so much, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Sheung. Maybe I should allow, you have 5 minutes. You have about 4 minutes. So maybe I should throw just one question at you before Mrs. Okerafor takes the floor. All right. So, Dr. Sheung, I'm just going to put you a bit on the spot. So just permit me, because in my opinion, as a psychologist, you are one of the few medical doctors that know these things. As a matter of fact, you're one of the few medical doctors I'm seeing that are making reference, that is making reference to people not within the hospital. Let me put it that way. Because in foreign countries, psychologists and all of that are, within the health sector, but I'm not sure, I don't know if that's obtainable in our own country, but you are one of the few. So I'm going to just ask you this question. At what point, it's going to be a 2-in-1 question. One, do you think being a doctor yourself, and that's why I said I'm putting you on the spot, because I know that you'll be true to your own, but do you think we have enough medical doctors in this country that are well equipped or well educated in the area of developmental needs? Because my experience, I'm going to be honest, my experience has been that, you're talking to parents and they're telling you something that a medical practitioner said to them, and you're wondering where, how? A medical doctor that spent not less than 7 years in Nigerian university, you know what I mean by not less than 7. We're never adding the housemanship, we had the strike and all of that. And the person could tell you that kind of thing, So, I mean, and over time, I began to realize that, they really don't know this. They don't know much about delays. So do you think that your colleagues in the medical sector are well-grounded, are well-educated regarding developmental delays? Has that been your experience?
Okay, well, at the end of the day, there are doctors and there are specialists. So if you're seeing a doctor, I think first thing first is to clarify, is the person a specialist? So that whatever they tell you, you need to know to what extent you hold on to it. Now, are you going to hold it on as a pinch of salt, or you're going to believe this person? So if you're seeing a doctor in a private practice for an example now, as compared to you're seeing someone in a children's hospital like where I work, the degree of information will be given will be a bit different, really. So that line has to be drawn first. Is the person a specialist? Is the person a child specialist? Or the person is just a general doctor, just to say? Okay. To answer the second part. Now, in terms of doctors in area of developmental need, I think for me, you need to be speaking to a pediatrician, really. If you're speaking to a non-specialist, you might not be getting the right information you need at the end of the day. So you need to just clarify that line. Are you speaking with a specialist, or are you speaking with a general practitioner, basically?
Okay, so that gives me a bit of hope. So let me just reiterate what you said. So, audience, what Dr. Sheung is saying is that when it comes to developmental needs, you should be talking to a specialist.
Yeah.
Best, speaking to a child doctor, not a generalist. Yes, exactly. Someone just put that in the chat room. Speaking to a child doctor, not a generalist. You can't go to a surgeon. Person be looking for what to chop up, but so thank you very much. I'm going to pause there and come back to you after Ms. Okerafor is done with her presentation. Ms. Okerafor, you have the floor. Dr. Sheung, thank you. You can stop sharing now.
Thank you very much. I think there's a question in the chat room for Dr. Sheung. Do we take it
Really?
now
Okay,
or
yes,
later?
let me. Okay, I don't think it's for Dr.
Is it wrong to
We'll
shake
come back to it. I'm reading
children?
it. I'm reading it. Please, we will not mind if we have a soft copy of the slides in our emails, as this will help us understand the subject well. We'll get to that. So we'll have to take these questions after your presentation, because it will eat into your time a lot. So Ms. Okerafor, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Dr. Sheung.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mrs. Okerafor, can you hear us? Dr. Sheung, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so no, Ms. Okerafor. Okay, I think we have you back now. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. My network went off briefly. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Let me give you the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you so much, Dr. Sheung, for that very enlightening session. And I think it's very good that we have that clarification, because we have a lot of parents, and like Nkoya was saying, a lot of times you're surprised at what we get to hear in terms of what's happening with children when they come in and they say they've been with a doctor, and the doctor just says, go and sit down and wait, wasting precious time from the 1,000 days you mentioned. So thank you very much for that clarification. I will just share my slide briefly. Okay. Can we all see my slide, please?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone who is on the program today. We do appreciate your presence and trust that this will be a very beneficial one. So Dr. Sheung has laid the groundwork in terms of developmental milestones and all of that. And for me, I think this is one, when we talk about critical windows of child development, this is one area that is very, very close to my heart, because as a parent, I've had experiences where my children were almost victims of not knowing what this period of their life means. That first 3 years of life, the first 5 years of life. But because I'm in the field, I was able to like catch those things very fast. And that kind of put me on this pathway to say, okay, there are a lot of parents like me who may not be in my field, but who would benefit from such information. So what do we hope to look at today? We hope to look at what child development is. Dr. Sheung has mentioned so much about it. I'll just browse through it. What are critical windows? What do we need to know about the science of brain development? What do we understand in terms of nature, nurture, and timings of child development? And what are windows of opportunities? Because when we talk about critical windows of child development, we are also aware that those windows provide opportunities for our children to make significant gains in their development, like Dr. Sheung rightly mentioned to us. So I'll just go on straight to what we have to discuss today. So basically, like he mentioned, when we talk about child development, we are looking at the sequence of development that happens in the life of a child. I know for a lot of us as parents, once our child can talk, once our child is mobile, a lot of times the next thing we want to focus on is academic achievement. We forget the emotional part of our child's development, and sometimes we don't get to know about interference with cognition until certain issues begin to show up. So today we're going to be looking at this and looking at the fact that child development is a holistic concept. Development in one area will definitely affect the child's development in other areas. Development in the physical domain will affect development in language, in thought, because experiences are the drivers of your child's development. So if a child is not moving around and engaging their environment, some of those opportunities to learn new things and put them to words may be missed. So basically, when we're looking at child development, we're looking at those changes Dr. Sheung talked about milestones, those changes, those milestones that happen from one point of the child's life to the next point. So what is critical window of a child's development? Okay, the science of brain development tells us that the earliest phase of when the child is born, even right from conception, when a mother is pregnant for her child, that the brain is developing even before you see the child. And in that place of brain development, there are a lot of changes that are going on. And then certain things can happen to that child at certain points of their development that can either promote optimal development or undermine the development of the child. So when we talk about critical windows of development, we're looking at windows of time during which children are sensitive to their environment in terms of their hearing, in terms of their vision, in terms of their language skills, and all of those things that happen. So even before you begin to say, oh, my child has 10 words, my child has 50 words, so much has happened already. And that is why it is so critical that we begin to understand how these things come to be and what we can do to position our children, whether as teachers, whether as parents, whether as healthcare professionals, so that we're able to position our children in such a way that they develop in the best optimal way they can develop. If you look at the screen, you'll see how this period of early brain development can impact upon a child's vision when they are not exposed to a lot of visual stimulation. Language also depends on verbal input, talking to your child and all of that, but we'll talk about all of those things in detail as we go on. So when we say critical windows of child development, we are looking at those sensitive periods in your child's development where you can move a lot of things in the environment, where you can manipulate the environment of your child's development to ensure that they develop optimally. So that's what exactly we're looking at today. And at the centrality of this discussion is the brain. I call the brain the powerhouse of all our experiences. If I'm going to hear something, if I'm going to smell something, if I'm going to feel anything, all of those things are received and interpreted at the brain, at the level of my brain, and then my brain interprets it and I get to take certain actions. What does this mean for our children? And when we talk about critical development, research has shown that when children are born, they come with a lot of potential. It's amazing to know that within the brain, the network of neurons at birth in every child that you see, children that are not compromised by any genetic thing, have about 50 billion neurons ready for stimulation, such that by the time the child is an adult, they have formed a very solid foundation for all the learning that will take place. And working with those 50 neurons, of course, the neurons are those, when we talk about neurons in the brain, neurons are the specialized cells in the brain that kind of receive and interpret information. And then you have the synapses that are in between the neurons that help one neuron to the other to transmit information. By the time, if you look at the time the child is born from the information on your screen, you'll see that the progression, the more synapses the child has in their brain, the faster messages get to be transmitted. It means there's more fluidity, there's more connectivity, and all of these are dependent on what is happening in the environment of your child. By the time the child is 3 years old, you have up to 1,000 trillion synapses. And then something amazing begins to happen. Because the brain is a very specialized organ, the brain, you have the speech center, you have the movement center, you have the visual center. So there's a lot of proliferation in the first 3 years. And after that, those neurons begin, those synapses begin to taper down. A pruning, what we call like a trimming process begins, because now the foundation has been built. That is the foundation upon which other structures, other more complex systems of the child's brain are going to be built upon. So now this foundation wants to be able to like manage those more specialized functions, those much more complex works. So it has to be very focused. So what the brain does naturally is that it begins to trim out all the excesses. it begins to reduce the synaptic connection such that there's a lot more specialization. And what happens during this period is that for those areas that are not stimulated, okay, areas that don't get to be stimulated, it sends a message to the brain that this is a non-functional part, and then you have what you call the use or lose situation, in which case areas of the brain that don't get to be stimulated enough will be trimmed off. So for instance, if a child does not get to hear a lot of language, this part of the brain that is responsible for speech, the part of the brain that is responsible for interpretation of sounds gets to be pruned down. And then the efficiency is not as it should be because it's looking to begin to do more higher functioning work. So we see that this first 3 years of your child's life are very critical to anything your child is going to become. While this does not apply to all areas of development, some windows will still be open until the child is an adolescent. But critical areas like hearing, vision, language, cognition, memory, all of these areas are being stimulated. I like to use the analogy of building a house, right? If you want to build a 3-story building, the foundation you would set is very much different from the foundation you set when you want to build a skyscraper. So that is what happens when it comes to your child's development. You cannot build the foundation for a 2-story building and expect your child to be able to have the capacity to achieve at this level of a skyscraper. So what happens during these early years is that with a lot of stimulation, the brain develops the capacity for learning. The brain develops the capacity for language. The brain develops the capacity for cognition and all of that. And how does this happen? I know a lot of us are familiar with the nature-nurture controversy. For a lot of times, we all used to believe that, oh, we are born, some people are just born intelligent, and some children are just born stupid. So there's nothing you can do about it. But that is not true. Nature would give us the blueprints, right? Nature would give you the potentiality. Nature gives our children the potentiality for greatness. But that greatness is only possible when we create an enabling environment that helps those areas of the brain to be actively stimulated in a way that they are strong enough to be built upon for future learning. So there's the interaction of nature and nurture. So what nature gives us, we have to be able to nurture optimally for us to be able to have children that would succeed. And at the other end, you'll find that time determines a lot of things, like Dr. Sheung said. Time in terms of doing what we ought to do, just as the foundation is being built, putting in a lot of cementing activities for the child, exposure to language, exposure to light, exposure to experiences, exposure to things that will help the child, the brain to be able to take in knowledge. So the time at which we create those opportunities for exposure actually determine whether they become consolidated skills and they lay that lifelong foundation for your child. In addition to building that initial foundation, timing is also critical when you notice, oh, my child is not, like Dr. Sheung mentioned, when it comes to milestone, you notice that your child is a bit delayed. Timing is also very critical because now the foundation is just being established. So if intervention comes at that time, a lot of good can be done and achieved for the child in a lot of cases within that first 3 years. So yes, there's a lot of talk about neuroplasticity and all of that, but the brain is more malleable when the child is very young. And as parents, as caregivers, we have a very critical role to play in terms of how our children get to develop. And like I wrote on this slide, we may not be able to control for nature. A lot of us fall in love, we get married. Sometimes you marry a super genius. Sometimes you marry a regular person. Sometimes, yeah, you marry someone that is a bit emotionally not that strong. But what you do with your child's genetic predisposition in the early years can change the trajectory of how your child turns out. So it's, a lot of times it's not when our children are grown and fully formed that all of these things can be done. It's actually in the early years when the brain is still very malleable. And like I said, this is very important for me as a parent, because if we understand this, then a lot of children that present in our schools, in our clinics, with language delay, with issues and all of that, will have no business turning up, because we would have made sure that they have a strong foundation right from the start. So this is not some random lecture on, oh, nature, nurture, and all of that, but it's helping us to know as parents, as caregivers, that what we do in the early years of young children is not, it's proven, it's in the science, it's in research. The information is out there, that what we do with children, the kind of environments we expose young children to, will impact their language will impact their reading skills, and all together they determine the kind of success that child gets to experience in the longer term. So we've talked about, in general, like I've been trying to say, we've talked about how nature, nurture come together and how time regulates all of this. So what do we need to know in terms of the different areas that can be susceptible within the first 3 years, right? What do we need to do so that we can begin to provide the level of support children need? The first year of a child's life is very critical for hearing and language development. The first year of a child's life is very important. Research shows that even when the child is in the womb, so the child is in the womb, the child would hear a lot of noises. The womb itself is a very loud environment of your organs and all of that surrounding the child. But in that space, your child can hear the voice, the noise, the sounds around the environment of birth, the environment where the parent is. And from the 6th month of conception, even before the child is born, the brain begins to localize those sounds and begins to differentiate those sounds. The brain begins to say, okay, this is a speech sound. This is a meaningful sound. Such that by the time the child is born and up to the time the child is about a year old, those sounds have become ingrained in the brain as meaningful, meaning they have consequence in the environment. So the child already knows that at that point, a cooing sound will draw the mother. A crying sound and all of those things are important. The child is already learning how to experiment with all the sounds that have been accumulated over time. And of course, the sounds that were not identified as meaningful get to be pruned out of the child's language. Why is this important that you should know as a parent? I'll tell you a little story about what happened with my own child. By the time she was 18 months, 2 years, I realized her language was not developing as it should. In the first place, she had very few words. She had syntactic errors, and then her articulation was poor. Not because she had a speech disorder, not because she had a developmental disability, not because of any of that. But as I got to find out later, because of course, it's one of the reasons why your doctor will ask you questions when you get into where was the child born, when did you take your child to crèche, all those history, because you're trying to know what influences have happened to your child that is causing how that child is presenting. So by the time I found that by the age of 2, and we started intervention, of course, that resolved. And I was able to pinpoint that we didn't get to do a lot of stimulation. And there's also a research out there that has to do with children in daycare centers, and the fact that a lot of those children are presenting with language delays. Because if the quality of the daycare center is not what it should be, where the child receives a lot of language stimulation, the time that the child is supposed to hear sounds, isolate those sounds as being meaningful, those windows of opportunity will be missed. And that is a very critical thing, not just for speech, but also for reading. If you look down here, you'll find out that hearing and being able to discriminate sound also has to do with articulation, phonemic discrimination. If your child wants to read, the first thing the teacher is teaching your child is b, k, the phonic sound. But if this period of development has not, if the child has a hearing loss, if there was not enough stimulation, exposure to sounds, a lot of sounds sufficient enough for the brain to centralize and localize and select those sounds as meaningful to the language, whether it's Igbo language, whether it's Yoruba language, it means that child will have an issue. And even for children that have hearing impairment that is not detected on time, within that first 12 months, an intervention does not kick in. Intervention would help later, but of course the impact will not be as it should be in the early years if that intervention had taken place within the first year. So sometimes, a lot of times, we miss these opportunities and then we're running helter-skelter because we do not have information. So the first 12 months is very important for hearing and all of that. Quite close to that is a critical period for language development. Like I said, sound localization through the auditory channels has taken place for your child. So it's now time for your child to begin to, for the brain to begin to associate those sounds to the things that your child sees that you have put a name to. So ball used to just be a cluster of sounds. But now your child is growing up interacting with the environment and realizing that ball is a round thing that you can kick around or you can throw around, and then the brain codes that and says, okay, a round object is called a ball. By the time the child has moved from 18 to 12, 24 months, vocabulary has started developing. The child has words, 50 words by 18 months and more like that. The child keeps accumulating words. And it's actually very interesting to notice that there's actually what you call a language sport for young children by 18 months. So when you have young children that they're not saying anything by 12 months, by 18 months, they could miss that window for a language sport. Language sport is just like when you have a growth sport at a time when the child's body is going through tremendous growth. So by 18 months, there's a language sport that you can optimize for your child if we're providing the appropriate kind of stimulation. By the time the child is 24 months, going on to 36 months, the child is able to gather those words and begin to put them into phrases. And that child, you have helped that child to optimize. But that will not be possible. That window of opportunity from 1 year, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months can be lost if the environment in which the child is put into is not sufficiently stimulating. If the environment in which we put the child to does not allow the child to learn language in a functional way. So it's a lot of excitement these days when parents come to me and they're excited. They'll tell you, oh, my child knows how to operate the tab and all of that. Early exposure to gadgets. We're in a tech world, but at this phase of the child's development, the child needs language inputs that has a feedback process, not a one-directional mode of communication. So it's very critical that as parents, as care providers, we should know. What other critical periods should we know about? Memory and cognition. So not all children are born as slow learners. Environment can contribute to the child's ability to learn. Environments for nutrition, environments of care can contribute to learning disorders, language, cognitive delay, and school failure. So when you're pregnant as a mother, they tell you to take your prenatal pills and you're feeling funky. You don't want to take it because it's a lot of work. But we could be undermining our child's potential for success if for any reason we become anemic and to the point that it affects the child in vitro. Anemia can affect the child's cognition, it affects the child's memory. And like Dr. Shen was trying to say the other time, children in extremely stressful environments where there's neglect, where there's abuse, where there's not sufficient care. It could be in um, remand homes. It could be even in our own homes where the child is constantly in an environment of stress. It kind of undermines the brain development. It causes those areas of the brain that are responsible for memory, recall, and all of that to thin out. In the first place, the part of the brain that is responsible for cognition is fragile. So when we now expose that child to extreme stress, neglect, abuse, the child is crying, there's no responsive adult that will attend to the child is constantly at alert, the child is constantly on edge. It is causing the body to produce hormones that are detrimental to the brain of the child. And then you're wondering, you're always beating the child, you're always shutting down the child, and then you're wondering why this child is so slow. We may not see a lot of that in children staying with their parents, but sometimes it's not far-fetched to see that children that are into child labor, those children they go to bring from the village and they put them to stay with someone and the child is constantly being stressed. It's not surprising that a lot of times they don't know much because their brain is constantly producing stress hormone and is shutting down the channels of learning and cognition. So it's not all children that are born to be slow learners. Sometimes when there's iron deficiency and the child is severely anemic at birth, within that first 12 months, it can actually lead to issues with learning, memory, and affect life achievements at the end of the day. Knowing all of those things would help us. Another one that is very close to my heart that I really wanted to share with us today for today's webinar is emotional resilience. So a lot of these days we have children that are not very socially aware, children that are very weak emotionally, children that are not present emotionally, children that are quite disconnected. And then we want to begin to work on these things when they're adolescents, when they're adults. That the truth of the matter is that science proves that the foundation for emotional resilience is built in the early years when your child is 2 years old, 3 years old. The foundation to be able to look at a situation and feel capable to handle it was first established when the child was a toddler, right? So it's not when they grew up. And how did that happen? It's from relationships. It's from nurturing care. It's from stability in the care relationship. So for some of us as parents, one nanny comes today, you're not at home as a parent, right? So you work 24/7, which is good. But you have today, Nkechi is the nanny. Next week, your child sees another person. There is no time for that child to bond and connect with anybody. This nanny comes, it takes the child some time to adjust and bond with the nanny. Before you know, you've gotten emotional, you've sent the nanny away. Your child learns the process again. That child learns that there's no stability in life. People come, people go. There's no need to connect with anybody. That's what you're telling that child. The same thing in our care centers, in our daycare centers. People come, people go. It's telling the child, you cannot connect. The child will feel insecure. The child will not be able to develop proper attachment. And then the child is living in a fearful world, emotional insecurity. And that child keeps building on that faulty foundation into adulthood. They don't trust people because people are always not there. There are no stable relationships you can count on. And then sometimes we don't allow children to explore in a safe environment during play. You're always shutting down your child. You're always trying to restrict them. So your child does not know how, your child does not have that, does not develop the sense of competence. That competence to look at situations and say, okay, I can try this, I can try that, I can do this to be able to come out of this situation. When children are in stable relationships, when the care is consistent, when children are allowed to explore in a safe and nurturing environment, they grow up to become balanced adults. So this is important for us as parents, as caregivers, as care providers to understand the importance of this critical windows. So it's not just a period where some parents will come and they say, oh, my child does not disturb. Yeah, your child does not disturb, but that child could be missing out opportunities to learn to become the adult you so want them to become. So the first 3 years of life are opportunities for us that we can optimize to ensure that our children have a solid foundation. The brain does not develop from up, down. It develops from down, up. We want our children to be great problem solvers. We want our children to be very eloquent when they speak. We want our children to read well. We want our children to be confident. We want our children, there are a lot of expectations we have of young children. But the thing is, we start those processes quite late because we do not have information. The more the child is exposed to this sort of experiences, stimulation, care, nurturing that is consistent, the more the brain is able to recognize that these pathways are important, and the brain nurtures those pathways and keeps them instead of pruning them off, and then the child will lose that skill. So what does it mean in our everyday action? What does it mean? Knowing what the critical windows of development are, what does it mean? What does it portend for us as parents, as care providers, as people that work with families? What does it mean for us? Why should we know this period? Why is the early years important? Why is a lot of governments around the world focusing on the early years foundation stage? Why are they putting so much money into programs for infants and toddlers? It's because they know that the economy and the potential of the nation depends on the quality of children that you have that grow up to become adults. The brain has been nurtured, the brain has been stimulated to be creative, the brain has been stimulated to succeed in school. So what does this mean for us in everyday action? It means as parents, as providers, we should pay attention for vision and hearing. We should check the hearing of young children. We should check their sight to be sure that they are positioned to be able to see clearly for visual acuity. They are positioned to be able to hear and localize sound, to be able to discriminate sounds and all of that. It's very important. It's also good that we know so that when these things are lacking, we can take action immediately when it can still be corrected. In terms of language development, it means we must learn as people. You know, we're in a culture where we just talk to children, or sometimes we just prefer children to be quiet. We don't want a lot of stress, but that is detrimental to the life of the child. We need to expose children to language early. We need to stimulate language by providing a language-enriched environment, in which case talk a lot to the child. This is one area that gets at parents. I see a lot of parents and they tell me, oh, my child is not talking. My child, what are you doing with your child? How often do you talk to the child? How often do you talk with the child? What are you exposing the child to? If there's not language-rich environment, if you're very comfortable that the child is not talking to you, trust me, that child will not have the kind of language you want. And why is it important also? If your child's language is very low, apart from the fact that the child may have a language delay, even if there's no language delay, vocabulary will be poor. The child will not be ready for reading success when they go to primary school. So all of those teaching of vocabulary, learn the meaning of words, you could have helped your child process from the beginning. By the time the child is going into primary school, the child should have at least 2,000 to 3,000 word bank. Because you comprehend and you read faster when you have a rich source of words. So we must learn to stimulate our children. And please, I know we are busy as parents. I know as schools, we think it's funky to put on the television, to put our children in front of the computer so that they're watching Dora and all of those things. We think it's, no. For the child to learn language and for it to be meaningful, the brain requires a back and forth feedback mechanism. And in the place of that back and forth, newer words can be injected. If you play your Dora and Friends 50 times, if it's 50 words that is there, it's 50 words the child will learn. It will not respond if the child says something. And it will not wait for that child to say something when the child is not saying it. So before we are exposing young children to a lot of gadgets, let's expose them to a lot of language. Read books to the child, let them see pictures, let them hear language, let them hear words, have conversations. Your child is having a language delay, not as many words as you would like. Have a conversation with your child. It will improve articulation. It will improve the number of words they have. It will improve your child's reasoning. These are facts. These are not theories. It works like magic. So please, let's begin to do things differently, because the early years is a critical period where you can achieve a lot in your child's development, doing the right things. And that is why this is very important to us. And this is why we're doing this today. And we'll continue to do programs like this. Cognition and memory, what do you need to do? You need to be able to take your supplements. You need to avoid stressful situations for your children, for young children. Be sure that if you run a daycare center, be sure that your staff are properly trained. Don't just have staff that will be gisting and children will be crying and there's no responsive care. Oh, that one, she just knows how to cry. No, that child needs you to comfort them. The child cannot be stressed 24/7. And as parents too, I know sometimes life gets at us. Sometimes as parents, we are in abusive relationship, but we owe it to our children and the future with desire for them to be able to protect them in that environment. As much as possible, do not expose young children to too much stress. A little stress is okay for them to develop that adaptive skill for life. But when that child is constantly being stressed, it shuts down the brain of the child. It releases stress hormone, and stress hormone, even for adults, is detrimental, let alone for the developing brain of a young child. Neglect, abuse, let's protect young children such that their future success and their learning is not impacted. And of course, you cannot love a young child too much. You cannot love a young child. I'm not talking of Ibaje syndrome now, right? The children need us to respond when they cry. They need to be loved. They need to be carried. They need to be spoken to. They need to be suited when they are distressed, so that they know that this world is safe. I am secure. And they need consistency. So we cannot be there all the time. We just need to be careful when we make choices in choosing care for our children, so that we don't have to keep moving them from place to place or changing caregivers. Once there's a stable adult that cares for your child is good. You don't have to be the one. Research has proven that. With the advent of dual income families, the first concern is what will happen to young children? Because of course we know young children need care. They need nurturing adults. They need consistency care. So if mothers go to work, what's going to happen to the children? But research was able to prove that once that care is stable, the same set of adults day in, day out, the quality of care is there, there's rich language stimulation, the environment is safe and secure, there's responsivity, that the child will do very well. So if we are looking for children that will succeed in life, children that will become emotionally resilient, children that will look at situations in their adulthood and say, I can handle this, we have to be more intentional in what we do in their infant, toddler, and preschool years. So I know in our culture, we are used to, when the child is in primary school, that's when they are aware, that's when things make meaning to them. No. You build the foundation for that skyscraping future you want for your child in the early years. So please, let's be more intentional as parents, as care providers, to ensuring that children have environment that is really supportive of them. So 3 things can help our children succeed as I round up, right? Nature gives you the gifts of potentiality. No matter how dull a child is, with the right environment, with the right kind of stimulation, the child has potential to achieve. No matter how brilliant a child is, in the face of adversity, stress, under stimulation, the child will not be able to develop fully. So what nature gives to us, we must learn to nurture in a way that is beneficial. And for it all to work, we have to be conscious of the timing, what we do in the early years, how we take action in the early years. Let's not wait. While you are waiting, what are you doing? So your child has, you, like Dr. Shemun said, you notice you're monitoring your child's development, your child has some delay, and they say, wait doing what? Whether your child has a need, a delay, or does not have a delay, your child needs stimulation. And if you feel something is not right, but you are not sure what it is, then you start to stimulate more, right? So my son is, he undergoes articulation therapy, but how did I find out that he needed it? Because I was monitoring, because I was checking the milestones. And when I noticed, so you stimulate, you monitor, you check, and you follow up. That's how it is when we have young children. We don't wait until they're all grown and out there before we say, oh, something is not adding up. You begin to monitor, you begin to check, you stimulate. So for all that we desire for our children to achieve in life, it starts from the early years. There are critical windows that you can optimize for your child's development, whether in daycare you work with young children, whether the child is in your house, the early years provide you with a window of opportunity to build the skills in for that child that will carry them through the lifespan and help them to succeed in life. I think that's about all I wanted to share in this presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I think I can hand over to Ms. Nkoye now. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, Mrs. Okera. All right, we're just going to go straight to the question. Please, I would like to see in the chat room, how is it going for you? Are you learning something? Are you having aha moments like me? If you are, please type it in the chat room. If you're having, for me, I'm having some aha moments. I'm just, I'm learning. I'm a psychologist myself, but I'm learning. I'm putting, my thumb to some things. We're just going to go straight to the question. SA and Anu Oluwapo, I notice your hands have been up. Do you have questions? Before I go to the questions in the chat room, I'm just going to throw a question directly at Mrs. Okera for, and I think someone else, I had it penned down here, and coincidentally, Tosin Harrison had already typed it too. I know she kind of like talked on it a bit, but what happens, like what I wrote down, what happens when the peak periods are missed? Now, I'm just going to be asking you on behalf of the, I'm going to ask on behalf of the panelists, so that the psychologist in me does not just assume some things. What happens if the peak periods are missed? Can they be corrected, and how can they be corrected? So like it's a 3-in-1 question. I would like to apologize to the guests. We seem to be running a bit behind schedule, but I have promised we'll not keep you here for long, but I'm sure you're gaining something. You don't worry, we'll still work within the time frame. So go ahead, Mrs. Okera.
Okay, thank you very much. What happens when the peak period is missed depends on when you get to find out or when you get to take action, right? Some of these things can be recovered, right? But it now depends on the area you're talking about. So in terms of language, definitely, if there's nothing wrong with audition, if it's not something that is related to hearing, the child can go on to acquire, to build on the vocabulary and make progress through intervention, right? Like I said, even before intervention, you want to stimulate your child. Once you notice, once you're checking, you're monitoring, and you discover your child is not making that much progress, look at some of the tips that we provided. Are you talking well to your child? Is your child sufficiently exposed to a language-rich environment? So what happens when you miss this periods of language development? It depends on when you find out. Okay, for some children, they are not able to totally recover. So you'll find some children that would still, with intervention and all, they will still have a bit of abnormality in their speech. I give you an example. For instance, children that have unidentified hearing loss. So by the time you begin, the parents find out and they want to begin to do intervention. If it's not within that first 12 months, what happens is, yes, hearing intervention has been done, maybe a hearing aid or a cochlear implant has been done, but some windows have been missed. The window for sound isolation and all of that. So those children would speak in a funny way. They would speak in a funny way. But will they acquire language eventually? They will.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm sure we'll see some of them around us.
We see some of them. So in terms of language also, you didn't pick it on time. The child would pick up eventually, but there will be that gap in terms of achievement. There's a research that, because the child's development is not put on hold, right? So for the next phase of development, there are new expectations. Meanwhile, you're just trying to catch up on the last phase. So the child will catch up, will make progress, but may not be at par. But it's better late than never. It's better we start doing something, immediately we discover and we give it all we have. So when you discover, get on board, get your child intervention and be involved. Speak to your child. There's a lot of opportunities in your house to help your child to recover those lost time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Okera. I'm just going to read a bit of the comments. Moyo says, yes, I have learned. Adetutu Adisa says, thank you for that wonderful session. Tosin Harrison says, I'm learning. Oh. Mr. Doye says, great presentation. Big thanks, ma. I can't see this person, but the person says, I didn't know when I uttered, wow. Well done, Mrs. Okera, for that was a great one. Lois says, thank you so much, Mrs. Okera, for that was informative and detailed. Now Moyo has a question. And I'll take this question, then I will call on Dr. Sheung, but this is not his question. After this question, I'll call Dr. Sheung. He's resting, so I just need to disturb him a bit because they were rejoicing too much yesterday. So Moyo's question says, how do you properly expose your child to a rich language environment? I think she has talked a bit on that, but Mrs. Okera, for in less than a minute, just touch on that again, because I know you have done that before.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's not as sophisticated as it sounds. When we say a rich language environment, it just means talk to your child, talk with your child, read with your child. Every opportunity, respond to your child. So the most critical thing about creating a language-rich environment for your child is understanding how the brain develops language actually. So let's look at that. There's what you call a serve and return mechanism that the brain uses when your child is trying to develop language, right? So your child has picked up all of the sounds from the environment and is trying to make meaning out of them. And your child would usually make sounds at you. The queen sounds. What do you do as a parent? You need to respond. You respond by affirming what they're saying, yes, and trying to make a comment or something, but just respond. And then your child would give you another serve. So I tell my people, I say, it's like a tennis game. So if there's a serve, you return it and you keep going back and forth. That's way those words are becoming ingrained. And also use your routines when you're feeding your child. Talk to your child. Don't make it a silence party. Use routines when you're bathing your child. Talk to your child about what you're doing, name the things you're doing, and create time to read books. As a matter of fact, two critical things when your child is, so during the vocabulary stages is a lot of serve and return. Okay, that helps your child to develop joint attention and build skills in those areas. But when you now get to the part where your child is beginning to put words together, right? And you're trying to get your child for reading success and all of that, expose your child to sophisticated language, expose your child to reading, expose your child to conversations. Don't just ask your child questions that they will give you a yes or no answer. Talk to your child in a way, ask them questions that will make them think and respond to you using a longer sentence. And then learn to scaffold your child's language. Scaffolding means you take what your child has said, add something to it that is new, so that a new word is learned. So when you've built a solid foundation in this area, it's amazing when I look at, so I have a 4 going on to 5 and I have a 3 going on to 4. They speak very sophisticated English. And that's because of exposure. Words that I didn't know at their age, they use those words. So don't think when your child begins to use words, you have to use simple language. No, just make sure it's contextual. Once it's contextual, the brain encodes it and is saved for a future time when it becomes relevant to the situation your child will use it. So that's where you're building up your child, you're giving your child a rich language environment. Please do less of the gadgets, do less of the TV time. Talk to your child during routines, read to your child, and do things that respond to your child in the early years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to go to the Q&A section. Dr. Sheung, are you still with us?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm tired of you having the ball. You've been having the ball since yesterday, so let me just throw some questions at you. All right, so I mean, the noise was just too much yesterday. It was almost upsetting. So someone had asked earlier, but I know you addressed it, but just in case the person logged in after you had said it, the person was asking, is it wrong to shake children or throw them up? Okay, so I was almost tempted to just type that for the person, but let the person hear it from you. Maybe the person logged in late, so please just help us in less than a minute, 30 seconds, just answer and I'll ask the other questions.
Okay, so it's very wrong, actually, especially if it's a baby. Maybe an older child, maybe if you are playing with a child, okay, maybe. But a baby, it is definitely wrong. And it's something we practice a lot in this part, especially those that still have grandparents, those that still have their father's mother or the wife's mother, and they are bending the baby's hand, they are turning the body and all that thing. It's definitely, it's a wrong practice. And if you find anyone doing it, please just politely, if you don't want to be rude, can you just take a baby away from them? Because there's something called shaken baby syndrome. And during that process, you can actually tear the vessels in the brain. The vessels in the brain of the baby, they are small. They are relatively small and very fragile. So in the process of you shaking the baby or turning the neck and all that, it can easily rupture a vessel. And the child could bleed in the brain. And this is something which you might not even know until the child begins to have other complications like seizures, or the child becomes ill and unconscious, and you begin to, you'll just be shocked that, okay, what's going on here? So it's something that's proven. You can spend your time and read about it, shaken baby syndrome. So it's something that should be completely discouraged. If you find anyone doing it, correct the person. You don't know, so you correct them nicely and politely. It's not something that anyone should do to any baby. It's completely wrong.
Wow. How did we survive it? Because
I don't know.
A lot of our parents.
Yeah, there are lots of harmful practices they do, but you begin to just wonder, how did we all survive it? But I guess we are here.
Honestly, I mean, if anyone did not believe in God before, they should believe in God now, because
I'm telling you.
Our parents did it a lot. I mean, I'm just sitting here and my mind is going back to some 13, 14 years ago, 14, when my niece was a baby and something my mother did. And to us, we're like, okay, well, she did it to us and we're here. So, and my niece is perfectly okay, but I'm just thinking of what could have been,
Exactly.
I'm thinking of what could have been. So I hope your question has been answered. The next question is for you, Dr. This is from Samuel Pakorede. He's saying, what is the role of occupational therapy in your line of treatment? He said, what is the role of occupational therapist? But I think what he meant to say was, what is the role of occupational therapy in your line of treatments?
Okay, so I think maybe the reference is those that have developmental delay, and it will be more of physical therapy, maybe not occupational therapy. So if you say you see a child that has some form of cerebral palsy, or let's say a child with Down syndrome, so definitely they'll need some degree of physical therapy in terms of mobility. Now, a child with Down syndrome, especially the ones that have the worst end of the spectrum, they are generally floppy. Their body is relatively soft. And your aim is for them to be able to achieve some degree of independence when they grow older. So physical therapy will come a long way in terms of increasing their muscle tone, so that at least the child can sit up. It might be a bit delayed, but the eventual goal is that you want the child to be independent at a certain age, so that the child can even move around, can be able to do basic things every child should be able to do. And also the same thing with babies, some form of cerebral palsy. We see some of them around if you watch videos and you see some on TV. So some become incapacitated for life. They're just restricted in a chair. But some of them still achieve some degree of mobility. It might not be perfect movements. Some might have some form of funny movements with abnormal posturing. But the fact that the child can move around, some of them can still use the toilets themselves. They can pee themselves. So mobility it's like an important thing of human development. You all want to move, no matter how small it is. You want to be able to move by yourself, not having to need help all the time to move. So yes, definitely, physical therapy, it's very, very important in some children with certain kind of developmental delay, especially if it has to do with the muscular development.
All right. Thank you very much, Samuel. I hope that question was answered. I'm sure it was, because even I got it well. Dr. Sheung, I'll come back to you in a bit.
Okay.
So, Kirafo, I have a question for you. I'm actually wondering if I should ask Dr. Sheung this question, but let me turn to you, Mrs. Okirafo. Dr. Choma says, how do you handle an 8-year-old who is highly emotional and cries at any little discomfort? I think both of you should answer that question. So, Doctor, yes, I think, because let's expand it a bit for this person, because how do you handle and let me read it again. How do you handle an 8-year-old who is highly emotional and cries at any little discomfort? Let's start with Dr. Sheung.
Okay, maybe now this is not any form of medical help. So maybe Mr. Okirafo will be able to shed more light to this. Yes, but what I can really say is this thing is not what started now. It's something that started at a very particular age, and attention wasn't paid to it, and this child continues to grow in this manner till now. So it's important for you to, for this kind of situation to have been better addressed. But currently now, definitely you need some form of physical therapy. You need some form of help in how to address this child, because you have to be decisive and gentle about it. So you can't forcefully address this. So the parents will need a lot of counseling and a lot of help in terms of how to manage this child, because you have to be very, very careful when you're handling, babies in this age. They've gone past their formative years. This is when they're building up. They are building on what has been formed already. In the formative years now, it might be a bit easier, but now you have to be very, very careful so that you don't lose the balance, because the child can begin to become withdrawn, begin to develop other behavioral problems, which you don't want that. So the parents definitely will need to see a behavioral therapist that can help them handling this. So I'm sure Mr. Okirafo will do better to that.
All right, Mr. Okirafo.
Thank you, very much, Dr. Shehu, for that foundation. I think the first thing not to do is to continue putting pressure or be harsh with the child. That's the first thing not to do. And the second thing you might want to consider as a parent in terms of managing this child. So it's established this is something that has been nurtured over time. You have reinforced that behavior positively. Possibly this child would cry at anything, you pet and you do all of those things. So the child has just grown to be that delicate, right? So the next thing you want to do is try not to reinforce it. And when we say try not to reinforce it, this is a first line level of intervention that you can do at home. You want to have a conversation with the child. Allow the child to finish. Then you have a conversation with the child. Ask the child, okay, in this situation, why are you crying?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to discountenance whatever feeling that is making that child feel overwhelmed. Children don't just cry. That child is feeling overwhelmed. So you want to be able to, first and foremost, affirm it, no matter what you think or how irrelevant or how unfounded you think that emotion is. You want to affirm it because then the child, first and foremost, the brain tells the child that this person will listen. Okay? So then you now begin to rationalize that behavior with the child. You have it's an 8-year-old child. At that stage, they understand a lot of things. So why are you crying? Does it solve this problem? Right? Don't you think you could have handled it better this way? So you're beginning to coach the child how to understand and manage emotions. So the first thing is not to apply pressure or be hard on the child. Oh, you know, in our culture, we like children that are hard. Any child that is not hard, you are dodo-yo.
Throw the child into the river.
Yes, you throw the child into the river and you hammer the child. That will, like Dr. Shehu said, it will make the child go further deeper. And that child is not far from depression.
Yeah.
So you want to prevent that. But at the same time, you don't want to reinforce the behavior. So you want to begin to help that child to become emotionally strong. So you want to affirm the child and help the child see other ways that they could respond when situations come up like this. Do you need to report this person if it's someone that is the source, right? And sometimes too, as a parent, you need to be able to be objective and supportive of that child. So because we all, we've put the child in a frame, in a box where you cry for everything. So even when the child is crying for the right reason,
you won't pay attention to it.
You won't pay attention. Yeah. And that can be very debilitating for the child. So first, the other thing is, no, was somebody else the cause of this problem? Deal with it. You have helped the child to know that, okay, this is not your fault. This is not you being overly emotional, right? So you've helped the child to realize that. Then you begin to teach the child coping strategies. No, you don't need to cry about it. This does not warrant crying. This is what you can do. You can come talk to me. Be the support system for your child.
Yeah.
Be the support system for that child. So you're not saying, oh, sorry. So you're just calm. Okay, so you're crying. Okay, so I'll give you some time to cry and then we'll talk about this. Have a conversation with your child. They understand. So you talk about it when the child is calm and teach the child how to respond better next time. And when the child responds that way, please reinforce. Give the feedback. Oh, see the way you handled this situation. That was very mature. That was very strong of you. Right? When the child keeps getting the feedback that they're making progress, they put in more efforts to get out of that situation, right? But don't just say, oh, put everything in the same basket and make the situation worse for the child. So if you've done all of these things and you still find out that, okay, there's still something going on here, you can see a behaviorist, you can see a child psychologist, you can see me. So that's what I get.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Okera, for let me just add a bit here. I think something Dr. Shehu said, he said that the behavior did not start today. Let me put it like that. First of all, we must understand that the time, the era where children should be seen and not heard has passed. So you want to check, was that child given a voice? So maybe that crying for everything is trying to get your attention. So you want to check that out too. Maybe because children should be given a voice. It's not in the time of no, you should see a child and not hear a child. So if the child realizes the only way I can get mommy or daddy's attention is when I cry, oh, that child will cry you a river. Okay, so you also want to check that too. Mr. Okerafor, there's a question here that I would like to throw at you. It says, how can we control TIC disorder when discovered early? After that, before you answer it, let me just read a comment from Uchechi. She says, thank you so much to the Nuture team for this informative, detailed, and enlightening session. Mrs. Okerafor and Dr. Sheung, you both are amazing. Okay, so Mr. Okerafor, do I have to reread the question again? You got it?
I got it. Okay. Thank you very much, Uche, for that comment. Really appreciate the feedback. Tics disorder. So now that's not one area that I'm very informed about, but what I know sometimes is actually a medical thing. Possibly we might have to allow Dr. Shinwo to respond to that. But I know a lot of times is it would require medical management. They might need for medication, depending on the etiology, what caused it, what is the cause of the tic disorder. So you probably might want to see a neurologist, a pediatrician. That's totally off our own turf. We don't do tic disorders. So I would allow Dr. Sean to take a stab at that, and if we need to refer them to a place where they can be better managed, that would be helpful.
All right, Doctor. Thank you, Mr. Okerafor, for doing that. I was going to ask Dr. Shinwo the part 2 of the question because the next question is also coming to him. So Dr. Shinwo, just touch on it and then I'll ask you the next question.
Okay, so as she rightly said, it's a medical problem, and the child definitely will need to see a pediatric neurologist. It's some form of seizure disorder, and in which the child have this form of repetitive patterns. And commonly, a common type usually is Tourette syndrome. Well, of course, there are different types of tic disorders. So definitely, the child need to see a neurologist. They need to do certain investigations, some brain scans, and any other test that is necessary. And definitely, the child needs to be on drugs. So definitely, the child needs to be seen by a neurologist, a pediatric neurologist.
Okay, so please, I hope the audience that a pediatric neurologist, please, not just anyone. So, but let me just take it a notch higher. Do you what sort of examples of the patterns? You said there are various types. So, can you give us examples?
Okay, so it could be examples of words. The child just keeps saying repetitive words or repetitive noises. Things that are out of place. The child could be in a class and just goes, wow. And it's not as if the child is doing it deliberately. Even some of them, they are conscious of it and it becomes embarrassing to the child. So the child could just be alone, and some even be muscular tics, and they begin to turn their neck, and it will just stop. And so it's really uncomfortable for the child also. Some of them are aware about it, but definitely it's something that needs to be managed with drugs, yes.
Okay, all right. So your next question, Bukola is asking, does nutrition play a role in child development in the first 1,000 days?
That's like the most important thing, really, at the end of the day. That's like the formative thing. Like the major part of our body, our cells, is proteins. So at the end of the day, you have to get it right from the beginning. So the mother's nutrition is very important. If you find the malnourished mother, she gets pregnant, she's not feeding well, she adds a baby, she'll probably be feeding the baby malnourished breast milk. Then the child grows up doing complementary feed, they're giving the child malnourished food. Of course, that child will become chronically malnourished, child will be stunted, child will have low IQ, recurrent infections. It's just it's the key of it. And the same thing applies to excessive nutrition also. if you expose your child to too much proteins and excessive nutrition in the formative years, the chances that they might become hypertensive when they grow older or become diabetes when they grow older too, is also there. So there has to be that balance. So there has to be that balance. So it can't be overemphasized. Nutrition is key. Even before pregnancy, you have to get it right. And that's why at times they advise those are expectant to start taking multivitamins, like pre-pregnancy multivitamins. So it has to be right from before when you're pregnant, while you're pregnant, while you're breastfeeding your baby, while you're weaning your child to home diets, till when the child can, yes, fully wean to regular house diets. Even at that safe, we still advise some to keep giving their babies multivitamins because most of our homegrown foods, how rich are they? How do we process them? We cook our food a lot. And because of cooking our food, you kill many of these vitamins in there. So somehow you still need to, complement them for milk, for multivitamins and things like that. So nutrition it's key, definitely.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have 2 more questions to go, and they are directed at Mrs. Okera. So Mrs. Okera, for the next question says, does speaking our native dialect affect language development? How many languages can be spoken to a child in early years?
Okay, speaking language. The language is your child's first identity. Okay, so it does not affect anything. As a matter of fact, the more language you expose your child to in the early years builds the capacity for your child to learn other languages.
Yep.
Up until the time your child is age 7, your child can learn as many as 5 languages. It does not affect, so the brain is able to organize the different speech sounds for your different cultures, right? What is important is you expose and you expose appropriately. Don't expose mixtures and all of that. Give your child the right, if you want to give your child a solid Igbo diet, give it to your child. If it's a French diet, the child has the capacity, the child's brain has the capacity to pick it up. It's only when the child, so even as an adolescent, the child can still learn languages. But if you want your child to be very fluent in any language, expose your child before they turn 7. Yes, your child can pick it up, and it has nothing to do. English is not your language. Any culture that, when we talk about language, let's not mix it up. So yes, it's good that English language is the language of instruction that we have in Nigeria. So a lot of times we want our children to learn English, right? However, the culture in which the child is born, whatever culture it is, the child will pick the language codes of that culture. And whatever language code you add to that, the child will pick it in those early years. Remember what we said about the foundation. So you want to build that you want the child to be very linguistic. Start from the early years. Expose your child adequately, and it's not going to cause any language confusion, except there's an underlying condition. Sometimes they can be it can further in what I've seen, even though the research out there says it doesn't, but what I've seen as a practitioner, sometimes when children have a disorder, it kind of slows it down for them because the child is not picking one language yet, is not consolidating, and you're trying to add another one. So there's always a mix, and sometimes some children will just shut down. But if the child is a typically developing child, feel free to expose your child. And even for children with underlying conditions, some of them go ahead to just pick up language by themselves in the early years. We know children on the autism spectrum that speak more than one language. They picked it themselves, and it's not interfering with anything. Thank you.
Okay, last question. How much, Mr. Okerafo, don't go yet. This is your question too. How much screen time is healthy for child development? How much screen time? So before you answer that question, I want to just add a bit, because I know someone who does not allow her children watch TV except weekends. So Mondays to Friday, as long as it's school day, it's not TV day. It's just weekends they watch. So how healthy is that? So you're adding that to this question. how much screen time is healthy for child development, and that practice, is it okay?
So before your child turns 2, the recommendation is no screen time, right? Before your child turns 2, because like we've talked about through the course of this discussion, your child is trying to more like build the foundations for functional language. So your child will do better with that human language. Your child will learn better that way. However, times are changing. Children are getting exposed to technology, even school now with COVID-19, everybody's on screen, right?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
standard before your child turns 2, no exposure from the age of 2, not more than 2 hours is the
Not more
recommended.
than 2 hours.
And when you do screen time, and even when you say, because now parents will say, oh, they have educational videos and all of that, for it to be effective and not impair your child's language, you have to be able to provide context for what your child is viewing. You have to be able to provide extensions, okay? Screen time in itself has, whether the media people want to own up to it or not, it's not just impacting language, it's also impacting attention span, it's also impacting auditory skills, right? Too much exposure. You see a lot of children these days, they cannot attend for long. So you want to save your child from that. The less screen time your child has, the better for your child. And if your
Okay,
child
so
must do screen time, let it be with educational videos that you can provide support for.
okay, so that's fine. The part of educational videos, because I was going to ask a question that I'm sure a parent here is asking, that I'm driving and my baby is at the back crying. You know the easy thing, just toss your phone to the child. The child knows how to operate it. Just toss your phone. Once the child can catch that phone, the child knows how to operate it. But you've already said educational videos. So the only thing I will add here is, mommy, daddy, as the case may be, if you are driving and must toss your phone to your child, please let it be an educational video. So I'm just going to read one more comment before I let you guys go. Even though I'm enjoying your presence here, I want to thank you all for coming again. Peace says, what a lovely session. Yeah, I think that's what she meant to say. Even if my network was bad, I learned something new today. Shaking baby syndrome. Not only that, but many more. Thanks, ma'am and sir. More grace to you too. Okay, thank you all. Thank you all very, very much. I'm glad it was worth your time. I know you all have to prep for work tomorrow. Some of you had to leave some things. Some of you are just coming from church. I really want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to our panelists who took the time to be here and pour into us. Just want to say thank you for showing up to be part of this discourse on child development. Your presence here today communicates strongly that you are a stakeholder in the life of a child, either as a parent, teacher, healthcare provider, or policy maker. For all of us as stakeholders, we think about the children in our lives. When we think about the children in our lives, a central desire fuels our efforts and drives in the things we do. We want our children to succeed. We want them to develop as they should, succeed in school, society, and in whatever future endeavors they aspire for. At Nuture Child Development Limited, we share the same goal of wanting every Nigerian child to succeed in life. We have taken upon ourselves the responsibility of ensuring that every Nigerian child has the best start in life by providing tools that will educate and equip every stakeholder with the resources to support the Nigerian child on the pathway to achieving life success. Research tells us that the foundation for future success is established in the early years, from conception through the age of 5 years. The foundation for social connectedness, emotional stability, academic progress, and even health is established. We will be educating and equipping our various stakeholders through: 1, knowledge sharing sessions via seminars, conferences, and webinars; 2, specialized training and professional development courses; 3, assessing access to community of fellow stakeholders. 4, access to screening and assessment tools to monitor children's development. Last but not the least, access to parenting master classes for parents of young children to equip them with skills to raise successful children. We have taken this responsibility upon ourselves because we believe that every Nigerian child carries in them the seed of greatness. We believe every Nigerian parent and early childhood professional is passionate and committed to unlocking this greatness in each child. They are only limited by access to the right set of tools they require to achieve this. We take this responsibility upon ourselves to close this gap so parents and care providers are equipped and our children start life from a foundation of success. Welcome and thank you again for joining us. We appreciate it. We welcome you to our space, Nuture. So for those of you who have been here before, you understand what I mean by welcome again. So if you've not been here, so I mean to say that we are welcome. This is not the first time Nuture Clinic is holding this kind of educational webinar. Our aim, like I have just read out to you, is to equip all stakeholders. We appreciate you for tuning in. Like I already said, it's Esther says it's I'm fully educated. Thank you. Yes, that was the aim. So with that last comment, I think I can say mission accomplished. I'm just going to take a few more comments. Kehinde says, I got value. Thanks so much. Oluremi says, thank you so much, Dr. Shehu and Pro Mabel, maybe Professor Mabel, for such an insightful and revealing teaching. I've read Esther's comments. Thank you. And at this point, I think we can say mission accomplished. Thank you. At least now you know where to turn to for help. Can somebody please just type the email address for Nuture, the address, just in case you're looking for where to go, more information, or you need help for your child, or you need to refer someone, because sometimes just being here, you may not even have this in your family. You may not have a child with needs in your family. I don't pray for you too. You may not even be in your lineage, but you have a neighbor, someone that needs help. And maybe all this while, you've just been staring and wondering, what's up with this child? Or maybe you even know that, okay, something is off with this child, but you don't know how to help the child. Please, now you know where to turn to. You can find us at 17A Amore Close, off Toyin Street, Ikeja. Okay, and then our email address is nuturenigeria@gmail.com. So Nuture, NURTURE, Nigeria @gmail.com. We also have nuturebestarts@gmail.com. Nuture, NURTUREBES. Nuture best starts, I beg your pardon, BEST, the starts. Okay, so it's all in the chat room. You can see it there, but I'm sure for everyone who registered, you got an email from us. If you read that email again, I'm sure you will see not just our email address, you will see the office address. I'm sure there's also a phone number there you can call. So spread the word, look out again. We'll probably be having more of this, and you can always invite people along. If you know you've got value, then please spread the word. There are people out there that need to know. Remember, we are all stakeholders in this. Before I draw the curtains and allow you to go and prepare for work tomorrow, I would like to take some final words from Mrs. Okera for first, and then Dr. Sheung. Final words, please. We have less than how many minutes?
Okay, thank you very much. It's always a privilege for me to share, because as a parent, I know how it is and how difficult it is when our children experience these delays. So I've enjoyed myself, and I look forward to more opportunities to share with all other stakeholders, so that at the end of the day, the Nigerian child has the best start. It's not about a disorder or a disability. It's about positioning the child for the utmost success that the child has the potential for, right? So sometimes it's not that the child has a disability. The child is coping, but that child could have done more. That child could have become more if we had done something when we were supposed to do it. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ms. Okera, for Dr. Ogunlaja. Hello, Dr. Sheung, are you still with us?
So Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
So I hope we all had fun. I hope we all had we learned one thing or the other. And it's always wonderful to impact knowledge. And it's always wonderful to clear and clarify gray areas. So it was great being here. Thank you, Nuture, for the opportunity to speak on the platform. And thank you for everyone that took their time also to come to listen to us. Because if you guys are in here, it probably won't be this interesting. So thank you, everyone, once again. God bless you all.
Okay.
Up Chelsea one more time.
Please. All right.
Up Chelsea.
Yeah, right. Well, the good thing is that I'm done supporting any club. Now I just enjoy good football. I don't have anything about Chelsea, so that people make a lot of noise. Even when you don't win, you make noise. Imagine that we will not hear the last of it in the next Champions League. Okay, so I want to thank you so much, Dr. Okulaja. Thank you for obliging us. Thank you to everyone who came here. Thank you. God bless you. Have a blessed week and stay informed. Okay, sir. Though you say up Chelsea, it's okay. I will soon log you out. It's all right. Okay.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Have a blessed week.
Bye bye. Thank you so much, Dr. Sheu. Bye bye.
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 Bye bye.